Hello, welcome to Smokin with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya, and today I'm very pleased to have a wonderful guest, Terry Haggerty, a legend in the cannabis world, and I'm now smoking one of his joints instead of one of ours. Here you go, Terry. Terry, in case some of you don't know, was with the Sons of Champlin for many years and traveled on tour at rock concerts, Grateful Dead. Who all did you, play with in concert? How many groups? I mean, Shaka Khan, you're telling me?
Shaka Khan, Taj Mahal, Quincy Jones.
Quincy Jones. You're just on the road for years and years and years, but you always were growing?
Well, you know what? I never wanted to go on the road that much, so I would take tours, but I never seen myself as a musician. I never wanted to be a professional musician. I just don't like the idea. I respect the fact that it's a great way to make a living, and I really respect how great people are when they become professional musicians. I wanted to play music that expressed wherever my life was at the moment, and I never had a thought about really making any money. I just fine.
Well, you told me before that you took kind of a sannyas thing, and you've never really owned a house or anything like that.
No, I never really had anything.
Never had anything.
But
But you have a collection of seeds, right?
I have the most amazing collection.
So this is one thing you want to understand, that Terry's been collecting seeds from these. We were talking, and I said to him, "Do you ever smoke Panama Red?" He says, "I have 2 seeds of Panama Red." And you're waiting to start them, right?
Well, you need the right chemicals, and we need a really advanced botanist to see if we can.
But you said you were trained in botany yourself?
Yeah, but I still am not. I'm not like a full professional botanist. I'm a master gardener. I know a lot about botany, and I know a lot about marijuana botany.
Right.
But there's techniques, and there's things that really take full labs and.
For the investigation, yeah.
Or for even taking the embryos of a seed and, like with the 6,000-year-old palm trees that they discovered in Tutankhamun's tomb.
Oh, really?
They actually got those to sprout.
It's still going?
But they had to. Mix them with this colchicine-based chemical. That basically what it does under the right laboratory conditions, it allows the remaining little bits of the embryo in the seed to regenerate itself. And so at some point, if it's done right, they can take these really ancient old seeds and they'll sprout. When they sprout them, they have to sprout them more on like an agar medium, so they can control the whole
agar medium, yeah. But you were saying that you didn't want to start these Panama Red seeds until you had the right conditions. So there's tricky. If you've got old seeds, it's not so easy to get them started. And there are little tricks that you can do. You can wash them with hydrogen peroxide. Yeah. Because a lot of times old seeds will have a little fungus on the outside. And that can, if you get them wet, that can then eat the seed itself in a way. So you want to wash them with the hydrogen peroxide and maybe even, put some sort of rooting medium or something. Some people, they sandpaper them and so on.
Sandpaper them, and I think is good. I think there's lots of fire-related seeds that you can use some of those techniques, the filing of them. Just make sure that the water gets in there a little bit quicker. Everything happens a little bit quicker. The spores can't really take over quite as quick.
See, now when sprouting seeds, I've had situations where they don't sprout, and I try to figure, okay, why didn't this set sprout, right? And so I started to realize that seeds in themselves have a level of consciousness, which is pretty amazing. Because in order to start a seed, it's got to have moisture. It's got to have a certain amount of warmth, right? It's got to have a darkness, right? And it's also got to have somehow a day-night cycle. Right? And those are diurnal cycle. Right? Yeah, so that's 4 things that this seed has to have.
Right.
But there's some other mechanism that is actually deciding. So that's the 5th thing. So the deciding mechanism inside the seed says, okay, I got water, I got warmth, I got dark, I got the diurnal cycle, let's go. But any one of those things missing, and it doesn't sprout. So it's a consciousness in the seed itself.
Yeah, it is. And one of the trickiest things when you're starting your old seeds, or any seed in general, is it has dominant and recessive traits. And most of all, the really high-end, high THC, and like all the really cool types of THC, they're, and the chlorophylls too, because there's like chlorophylls and xanthophylls. There's like, I think, 30 different types of chlorophylls that affect plants. And in marijuana, there's 4 or 5 different types, and you can see how they move through their color spectrums and stuff. And so those different types of xanthophylls actually, when they're smoked with the bracts, really affect the high. So those are all things that you really have to pay attention to, and that usually comes down to picking your seedlings.
Right.
Because, you know, once you get to know a strain, you can see the strong ones, and you can see the more recessive ones, the more delicate ones, the ones that might have that really sublime flavor, you know, that you're always looking for.
Yeah.
And, but they're the hardest ones to grow. And then when you have herb like mine, which is pretty much, there's nothing that was grown underneath 7,000 feet, and you're actually
The original seeds.
The
stock.
original seeds,
Right,
yeah.
right.
And so you bring them back down to sea level, and you grow them, and what they want to do is, like most things that get over fertilized, they want to get big, and they want to get all the things that you don't want on the plant, you know? You don't want a lot of vegetation, you don't want a lot of stem, you don't want a lot of stuff. That was the trouble with all those Packy hash plant things, is like big stems, just a rough taste, strong.
So you're really advocate of smaller plants also?
I'm an advocate of the more delicate plants, and I'm really an advocate in growing smaller plants where you can really control just the beauty of the bud and the structure of it. And, you know, they're living things, and that's the one thing that I've really realized about my herb. It really wants to stay clean, and I don't take all the leaves off by any shot, but I take a lot more leaves off than when I go up to Humboldt. I see my friends grows, and they've got these giant hash plants, and they're just loaded with leaves, and they don't take the leaves off until the end, and they field trim them, and it's all good. It's, you know, keeps
Well, there are many
everybody-
different techniques, though, for this sort of thing.
Yeah, but for me, when I hang a plant, it's basically trimmed. Everything's off of it. And in the last 2 weeks or so, everything's off of it. It's just like buds just standing on sticks, you know.
Lately, I've been leaving more and more of the leaf on to hang, and then that protects it, right? So it's a question of how well it dries, and that's if the leaves are on, right? So it's everybody's trying all these different techniques to see. So, but first of all, I want to say Terry has this wonderful strains called Haggelishas, right? And that's, you want to remember that name. We got these posters that he put out, you know. And the poster, this is some sort of Himalayan shot up here, right? And
K2.
K2, right? And that's the second highest mountain after Everest, and so on. And the flowers from up near Kailash, right?
Right.
Which
Well,
is,
this is a part of a walk around Mount Kailash.
well, that's the most sacred pilgrimage you can do, is
Yeah,
to go
right.
around Kailash, and there's a Lake Manasaravar there, and so on.
So it's interesting, like when this photo was taken, like all the prayer flag sites had tons of Sons of Champlin T-shirts.
No, really? Okay, all right.
I'll bring you some photos.
All right, that's great. That's great. Well, anyway, the idea that Terry's one of the people who has been a seed developer, a geneticist for many, many years. He's got a huge bank of frozen seeds and brings them out. Like last year, you did only seeds from the 80s or something like that?
1981.
1980, just the 181.
1981.
Right, right.
Well, you know, there's so many variations in any group of seeds.
Well, that's what I was talking. Like things can present from the great-great-grandmother, great-great-grandfather, recessive for 4 generations, and then come out in your crop, right?
This strains that I have one strain that I'm growing this year that I can honestly say I've been looking for this expression for 20 years.
Wow.
And I've always known it was in there, and it's never quite happened. And this is the first time forever.
I see. So are you going to clone from that or what?
Oh yeah, I've taken bunches. It's
So tell me a
exclusive.
little about your cloning thing. You clone a lot of plants. You clone everything.
What I do is I start my seeds in. I start my seeds under 12-hour light with a flowering bulb, and within 2 weeks at the most, everything showed sex. Then I take them and I top them, I transplant them, and I move them out in my greenhouse in natural sunlight, and they grow, and then I label them all, and try to have an accurate male, female, certain amount of lineage, where they come from. And then they get a number, like this is 14, but this
That we're smoking now, yeah.
But this was out of 35 females. It's the one I chose out of this group. And yeah, a lot of them were really good, but this one had the most recessive qualities.
But there's an intuition about this too, the sort of sense.
Yeah, you can
Because
see
you're
it.
talking to this plant. I know that, man,
yeah.
because we're on this level of like tuned in.
Well, that's the real truth of the whole thing. Everything that I'm saying is I'm just talking about me, but that isn't really what's happening. And thanks for reminding me,
We're always you're
like,
reminding me all the time too, man, because it's that wavelength that we tuned into. It's an eternal wavelength, but we tuned into it in the late 60s, right?
Yeah, right back then. I am not the doer. But it's so easy to forget.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, it's the energy flowing through you, and you're humbled and blessed, and just totally amazed by the energy flowing through, but realizing that it's just coming through.
And plants are archetypal ancient beings, and they're right there with the ancient one. They come out of that.
Right. You talked about chlorophyll, and a lot of people don't know that the difference between our bodies. We have hemoglobin in our body, which is the main thing in our bloodstream, which carries the oxygen, right?
Right.
And if you look at the molecular diagram of hemoglobin, and you put it next to the chlorophyll, they're exactly the same.
Wow.
With one difference.
Wow.
Hemoglobin has up here a little iron molecule, and chlorophyll up here has nitrogen.
Wow.
Right? Otherwise, they're exactly the same. That's how close we are to the plant kingdom.
Yeah.
Right? And so the chlorophyll that we get out of cannabis and those other things is going to go into our bloodstream, I suppose. I'm not a scientist on this, but there's this amazing symbiotic relationship, right?
Well, we have about 90-some percentage of all our genes are shared by all things.
Yeah.
It's only a small part that make
the differences, right. And of course, then we have our own cannabinoids in us that we found out in the last, 20 years, that our bodies are making cannabinoids all the time.
And you just intuitively knew that if you smoke pot, it connected to the cannabinoids in your brain, and all that really just joyous firing of well-being didn't cost you anything. It wasn't like some nasty drug that basically used it up, and then you were never going to have it again, and that's the way.
But they even named one of the internal cannabinoids anandamide. That's the name of one of the internal cannabinoids that we make. Ananda is Sanskrit for bliss.
Right. That's fabulous.
That state. And so they say that many of our problems are from an insufficiency of anandamide. Right. And every one of our internal organs carries some sort of cannabinoid. So.
Well, you know what? In the end, when you smoke the pot, and then your inhibitions lift, and you can go and tell everybody how much you love them and how great it is to see them. And
right. So do you want to talk about, you were saying a little bit about when you were performing and you'd look out on the dance floor and you'd see the different groups and so on and so forth. You want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the really nice things about being part of the San Francisco scene, because there was that window of time where everybody really didn't even have an opinion. It was just unfolding in front of you, and everybody was so beautiful, and everybody shared such a common sense of, I'm going to have this great life, it's going to be creative, I'm going to feel safe, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And
excuse me one second. You say everybody, and that's another thing about it. When I was in the hate in those days too, we thought everybody.
Yeah.
We thought everybody was there. It was a total consciousness. It was
do.
a very small little group of people, man. It was a very tiny little group.
I still do. Either way.
But that consciousness potential in everybody.
That's good enough for me. It's the only difference is time, and time kind of is pretty malleable.
So now you're on stage and you're performing, and everybody is there.
Back then, I got to preface this a little bit. We had this manager, Fred Roth, he did art shows with Gary Snyder. So when the Sons, initially became psychedelic, we were surrounded by the writings of Gary and Alan Watts because they were really good friends of Fred's.
Yeah.
Fred was the kind of guy that his whole body, he'd be on the ground, his whole body would just poof into this aura of white energy. And I mean, it was like this huge, huge bubble. And if you were high enough, it would hiss, it would go shh. I mean, it was an amazing manifestation of energy. I felt so akin to him, and kind of had like not quite that big an experience, but an experience like that, tripping. And I just took it onto the stage, and all of a sudden I could see the energy of everybody just right above them. It's just like this field.
The aura.
This just field, connected field. And so ever since then, whenever I'd play, that was in my mind. That's what I'm trying to serve. I just think life's a series of experiences, and those are good experiences that you can't think away. They're always going to be indelibly part of you. That's why I think everybody's good, because in the end run, once you've got the gift, you can't get away from it.
Really. And you can see other people's aura that way too. Like sometimes the aura is like golden, or a lot of times you see a blue-white aura, or fluorescent blue-white aura, right? But then you can also see, like with certain kind of people who are very sick and very ill, you can see kind of a dark greenish, blackish aura on them too. So and you say, well, how do we cleanse that, right? So anyway,
those are the initially coolest questions, because I mean, you're a wise man.
Well,
but
I'm just a guy, man.
But I mean, you have wisdom, and like what, from working with the dying people here for quite a while, it's like there's just questions about what comes next. Go to the white light, don't go to the blue light, or go to the blue light and choose a better manifestation of a life. There's so many things that really are intrinsic in the marijuana high, in the continuum that it presents, that you can't help but want to be part of and contribute to. But nobody really knows that much.
Yeah, the continuum, right? That's the thing. We talk in Hinduism and yoga about what is called the Sanatana Dharma. And Dharma I see as the eternal flow. The Sanatana is the eternal flow of energy of consciousness. And it reaches expression in certain times and places that bubbles up. And definitely one of those places was the hate in those years, and just the 67, all around the planet actually. Not just the hate. In New York and Paris, even in China and various India places. And so there's this spirit that bubbles out and comes out, and it keeps doing that, and it keeps coming out. And that's what we want to encourage every time, right?
I had a trip where I just thought, all of space must be conscious. And as the Earth just travels through it, it's traveling through different fields of consciousness. And we all get it at once. That's the way it is.
Yeah, no, we are in this huge cloud, and at a certain point you get into certain areas of it, and that brings out certain things into mind, right? Brings certain ideas to fruition and so on. Well, you know what? We're actually really getting close to the end of our little time. I wish we could do about 3 more of these, Terry, because we're just kind of getting warmed up. But, we're going to be knowing each other for a long more time. Right? So, and it's just been great. I've just gotten to know this guy in the last, 2 weeks or a month or something.
We have more friends than you could count.
In common.
On so many levels. It's funny how you just go parallel but you don't see each other
Right.
until time is right.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, thanks so much, man.
Oh, Swami,
and
thank you.
we'll be talking a lot more. So, thank you for joining Smoking with Swami and Terry Haggerty and Haggelishas. And you actually, I have to mention, you can get it at the Barbary Coast nowadays in San Francisco. That's one of the special places. You can also get Swami Select there too. And it's proud to be together with Terry on the shelf. It's
Oh
really
yeah, no,
wonderful.
I have a feeling that maybe there'll even be genetic collaborations that happen in the future.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thanks again. Smoking with Swami. See you next time.